Clubhouse.
This is Stef.
This is Paul.
And this is Sheila. Welcome back to the Yellowstone Podcast, brought to you by Clubhouse. Oh my gosh, guys. This one is season 5, episode 14.
I know.
Life is a Promise, aka series finale, maybe. Definitely the season finale. Whew. This one was written and directed solely by Taylor Sheridan. So he was in the chair, driving the bus off a cliff. For certain people.
Oh, way to jump in there, Sheila.
Yeah, so I mean, this was solely his vision for this episode. So let's agree to something here today. Let's the three of us agree to something.
Lay it down.
Are we calling this the season finale or the series finale, or does it matter?
For my money, that felt like a series finale.
It did.
I mean, you had the bookend voiceover from Elsa from 1883. You tied up the stories of the main characters and gave them a potential push into the future if you needed to revisit them, or maybe even give them their own show if you wanted to. But in terms of continuing this exact story without like Yellowstone : something, you know, the next generation, it doesn't feel like that's going to happen. Like it's going to, Yellowstone, that feels done.
I had several people messaging me, asking me what I thought. And I was just saying that this felt like a really good finale. It just answered all the questions that we really needed to know. It ended with everyone having some sort of closure. I think that was a big thing we've talked about before this recording, is that closure was like a big word, I think, for this episode. And so it just felt good to see like I wouldn't say a good ending. You know, I don't know the happy ending necessarily, but it was a good way to end this show, and it really did feel like a series finale to me, and I would be happy if that's how we wrap that up.
I feel really satisfied with where we've ended up. I mean, I've seen some things online where people are like, this was terrible, blah, blah, blah. I don't think it was terrible by any stretch of the imagination. I think if we had cliffhangers galore, people would be shouting from the rooftops, like, how could you do this? But in terms of Yellowstone and this group of people that we've come to know and love and loathe over 7 years, I find that this is a satisfying end.
I agree.
We got a lot of the greatest hits of Yellowstone that we've come to know and expect. You know, we got a really big Beth fight. We got vengeance, which is a big theme in the overarching Yellowstone story. And what you mentioned here, Steph, we got closure.
Yeah.
And I think another big theme here tonight was forgiveness.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the conversation today is going to center around closure, forgiveness, vengeance. But overall, I feel like this was an artful, elegant solution to a lot of the questions that were still left open.
Looking at the whole half season altogether, even though so many of the episodes had this kind of plodding pace, you know, where they were spent time on things that didn't necessarily move the main plot forward.
Travis.
At the same time, the events that did move the plot forward kind of felt rushed as like a viewer. Just, you know, having been a fan that tries to defend the aspects of the latter seasons of the Game of Thrones series to people, I can appreciate what a rushed ending kind of looks like.
Yeah.
If you recall, that last season of Game of Thrones was also only 6 episodes long, and they traveled all over that continent in 6 hours.
More or less, yeah.
Miraculous.
And the previous seasons, they had taken all season just to get halfway across the thing. And now, anyway, that's beside the point, but it's just a parallel to, in that case, those creators decided they wanted to move on and they needed to wrap up the show. In this case, this show was largely a Kevin Costner vehicle.
Yeah.
With him deciding to leave, I think Taylor had to just make a call and be like, well, we need to end this show as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's jump the shark territory. Every show that you can think of that has tried to move on when the main character leaves is this pathetic reflection of its former self. You know, the 2.5 Men after Charlie Sheen leaves. It's not the same show, and people leave. They just leave.
We don't want a show like this to limp along. We want this one to be robust and what we've expected all along.
Was it rushed? Probably. Could he have done it another way? No, I don't.
Yeah,
I guess not.
Yeah. We sort of got what we needed out of the last few episodes. And if it was rushed or we skipped over some parts or, whatever it is, it still was a good ending to the story, I thought.
It took the low-hanging fruit, the things that we definitely needed answered, and answered it. Were there more things?
Yeah.
Probably. but resolving the Jamie and Beth conflict.
Yeah.
Giving a story arc to Rip, to Casey, major characters in the show. All these things did play out. Well,
like you said, sometimes these sort of ending to shows, it feels like a completely different show, right? It almost feels like a different writer or a completely different scenario. This still felt like Yellowstone. It still felt like the same characters. It still felt like the same writing to me. But I agree, we did skip over a few things.
I'd encourage you co-hosts and listeners to go back and just watch either, say, random clips or random episodes of early seasons and get a sense of where we were with some of those characters. Like, I was just looking up basically like awesome shit that Rip has done. And one of the clips that came up was Casey coming back to the ranch and trying to frighten off a bear, and Rip saving him by firing a gun into the air.
I don't remember that.
They do not like each other.
That's also the story arc. Don't they beat the snot out of each other?
Twice. Because,
really?
they Rip gets down off his horse and they trade blows, and Casey loses that little exchange and Rip just goes back to work. But if you recall, Casey was basically given Rip's job at a certain point. But Rip had to lose a fight to Casey in order for the other cowboys to kind of
now I'm starting to remember this.
Understand the pecking order.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So to legitimize Casey here.
Yes. Yeah. Not that Casey was in on that plan. Rip just knew that it needed to look good, but he had to lose.
Yeah.
And he's never lost.
Yeah.
And so if you think about this complicated history and it ends with him saying, "I'll come help on your ranch, brother." I mean, that's
a big deal.
That's a big, and it feels earned. It feels like they went through some shit and they had a big arc. They're not brothers by blood, but they are family now.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point, Paul, because there's been this was also like a moment to reflect as well. There's been a lot of, even just this episode alone, a lot of callbacks to earlier seasons. 1883 figured so prominently in this episode in particular. I don't know if you guys caught some of the things that happened in this episode.
Besides Elsa's voiceover?
Mm-hmm.
Besides the narration of Elsa, but there was a couple of things that I was just like, wait a second. I've seen that before.
Right.
I've heard that before. So we'll talk about that too. But I just like that some of the things in this episode felt very intentional to bring us back to that full circle theme here today.
I think for whatever writing faults Taylor Sheridan has, and he has them, he did craft a start to finish story that is multi-generational. And this is a hugely ambitious thing. And unfortunately, he had to publish chapter 8 without chapter 6 and 7.
Yeah.
So you had to jump from 5 to 8, basically.
Yeah.
This is just the reality. This is, the timeline we're living in. We don't get the complete Yellowstone. We get this Yellowstone. And he made the best of it.
Could have done without more Travis in this episode. Like when you talk about things being rushed versus things that were stretched. Could have done without, the Travis smart mouthing in the bunkhouse.
I mean, that aspect of it feels too vanity to me.
Yeah.
Especially since we know projects are going to move forward. One of those projects is going to be in Texas. That's where his ranch is.
And we had a lot of this grandstanding last episode.
I've seen some of the comments on Facebook and stuff are just saying
none are positive.
No, they do not like him. And we agree.
Like, great story. Thanks for the series. Thanks for the finale. You could have been in it less.
Yeah.
So
is that him being himself, or is he playing up this whole total asshole vibe.
Well, that's my question.
You know what I mean?
Like, how much
if
does
that's
art
what it's
imitate
like to
life
work
here?
with Taylor Sheridan, I'm like, ooh.
In interviews, he seems more laid back, but on the other hand, I don't think you get to be a mogul like he became from being a character actor to who he is now without being a fairly assertive / aggressive kind of guy.
I was kind of thinking that when I was thinking about those comments and that he's kind of a jerk. I'm like, well, maybe that's how you become such a big deal.
I think you might.
Yeah.
I think you might. But like I said, I haven't met him. We haven't had the opportunity to interview Taylor Sheridan. Just have to go on the same kind of things that other people have to go of, the interviews and comments. And, even when Kevin Costner left, his comment was, well, I hope it's a good movie. There's a million ways to read that.
Right.
But those were his words on paper. I hope it's a good movie.
Without tone or inflection.
Yeah, right.
A sarcasm font or anything.
No, yes. All right, team, where would you like to start?
I think the opening of the show is probably a good place to start. It's probably, believe it or not, the least emotional, the least dramatic, even though they are tampering with federal pipeline supplies. Oh, my question was, were Mo and Rainwater, were they aware of the deal that was pending with Casey when this was put into motion?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wasn't sure, but how much had really been divulged from Casey to Rainwater?
The look on Rainwater's face when Casey's explaining the deal to him is like barely contained.
Like trying not to smile.
Well, here
like,
we are a week before
serious.
Christmas, right? It's like, kids on Christmas morning. Okay, so I just didn't know if he had any sort of, he did say, even the wife doesn't know. Okay, so
yeah.
So my question also about what happened at the beginning is, wouldn't laying pipes at the bottom of a reservoir still be bad for the drinking water?
Maybe not that bad, I guess.
Well, they look like they are treated in some way. I think we might need a metallurgist to...
Yeah, I don't know. It just maybe not the greatest thing for the water supply for in perpetuity. I did like the fact that there was the machinery that was used. It was like a callback to all the fuckery that happened with young John Dutton and...
those shenanigans.
What was it? The EPA inspector? Yeah. So and Paul, you had that foreshadowing the last time out too. So I just like that kind of came to fruition.
Last time we were questioning, really, what is this going to accomplish and why would messing up a few pipelines make a dent in this problem? So I really liked that we had that conversation with Rainwater and Mo about why, do you think it's going to work? And he said, I think it's going to make some noise. And then we're going to make some noise. And so I liked that we had that. And that's a good plan, I think. I think dropping some of the pipes in the water is not really going to stop it, but it's going to cause enough issue.
It's going to give them time.
Yeah,
it just happened before they could even react.
Yeah.
And there will be consequences for this action. However, it's still going to take time to truck in more pipe, and who says they didn't do more? We just saw the pipe, but maybe they sunk everything. I don't know.
I was wondering why they were dragging brush behind the horses. Was it to cover their tracks?
Yeah.
Probably.
And their numbers. Yes.
And their numbers? What numbers? Oh, how
many? There was 100 of them.
Oh,
yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
No, they have numbers on it? I was like, what are you talking about? I don't know. To me, I was like, are they saging the area? I was like, what are they doing?
That was at the end.
Yeah, that really was. I thought that was wise to sage the land. But anyways.
Either way, they were pretty strategic in how they went about this.
Yeah.
Putting it in the reservoir would be too much of an extraction process. So I just thought
it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Yes. And who knows what type of damage was done with the heavy machinery moving it and things like that. So from this point, chronologically, we move into the bunkhouse where Travis is back again, and he's more showboating. FYI, Jake Ream has 8,756 followers on his official Instagram.
That's the character or the actor?
The
actor.
But
okay.
I don't know if Jake has a last name in the show.
I don't think so.
Is that
Plays
before
himself, I believe.
The episode or after?
It's the same night, so I don't know. So I was about a half hour behind. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, the one time I need to be on time to watch a show, because I never watch shows as they air. The one time that it was really important, I'm like a half hour behind. I'm like turning off my phone. I'm muting messages because people are like, what's happening? It's like, I don't know. I'm not there yet. So, but I was looking at Instagram about a half hour or so after that. But I liked how this episode took the time to look out for the cowboys and the cowgirls and where they end up. It felt important to me for them to get a happy ending here, as much as possible, because they've had a lot of tragedy in their lives, and most recently with Colby and all of that. So for me, that was a very important storyline to wrap up.
I think that we saw all we really needed to see from them, and especially the feeling that everyone had a plan, everyone had a place to go, and having them help with John's burial too was like, again, another piece of closure there, you know, because he's the one that, well, I don't know if he's the one that initiated the brand, right, on your chest, but that's sort of why they wore that brand, was for him. And so it was like a good sort of wrap up between ending a job, but really it's ending more than that. You know, it's a sort of a loyalty to someone.
I agree with all that. Given that they've been very down on the cowboy life, like the fact that they all found, everyone that looked for cowboy work found cowboy work.
Yeah.
So
I thought it was a little sad that when, Ryan was saying his goodbyes and they're all, it seemed a little bit of a happy goodbye with them, right? They're kind of joking, and Rip is just in the background and he looks very sad to me. And no one's sort of saying goodbye to him and a sort of closure with him. And then he immediately switches to the whole Beth situation. But I thought that was a little weird how we didn't see anybody sort of saying goodbye to Rip.
Well, Rip's little brain tumblers were all falling into place about what Beth was doing right at that moment.
That's not what I was reading in the scene, because we were watching Ryan
farewell
and them all sort of laughing and,
you suck at cards,
saying goodbye. And his look on his face is very emotional, upset. And then he drove off, and I thought, well, is he sad because Ryan didn't say goodbye to him?
Well, he's always been, distant with emotional things. He stays back.
Right.
And he still does stay back.
I am glad that they wrapped up the Cowboys. And for what this episode was, this was the comedic relief moment that the Bunkhouse Boys have given us all series long. You suck at cards, these little moments, and even
he's like my baby ears,
my baby ear,
yeah,
that was really cute. But like all of that was really the tension breaker for these very serious moments, and I just appreciate that we got to see where these guys and gals all end up, because that would have been very dissatisfying and a very hard pill to swallow if we didn't know that Lloyd was okay and Carter was okay and even Teeter, though we can't understand her. And she's hitching her post to Travis, okay, down there in Texas. But she's going to be with Jimmy, and I think that that's very sweet as well. I think he was happy Teeter was there, because now he's no longer low man on the totem pole. I think that was explaining some of his smirking that was going on, these cute little smiles that he was throwing out. I think he was just happy that it was just it's not going to be just me now.
I just realized that although we saw Laramie, they didn't tell us what Walker's doing.
Yeah.
Did they?
He's just going to go with her, babysit her and her camper.
That's what he said on the rodeo circuit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So So the two that had...
He's going to be the Buckle Bunny now.
Lady first. Right. There you go.
He's the eye candy.
Okay. All right. That one slipped by me.
It was very quick, and Laramie didn't really say it very clearly. I caught it on the second watch.
All right.
So you are given a pass.
Thank you. I might need more in the future of this podcast.
Okay.
And I was really happy to see Lainey Wilson back, because I love her so much. She is so talented. I love that song she sang. I don't know if we needed to see that as part of the episode, but I enjoyed it because I just like her.
Do you think it was a contractual thing?
Probably.
I'll do it, but I got to sing.
I have to sing a song.
3/4 of a song.
A whole 3-minute song. Or
it was a lot in that scene.
It was a long song.
Yeah.
But it was good. It was definitely worth it.
I know.
More her, less Travis.
Well, Ryan is one of the really likable characters. I mean, just every time he's gotten a chance to be on screen, speak up, do something, whether he's a part-time livestock agent or something, he's just always been a capable, friendly.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you need that guy on a show where so many people have much stronger and unlikable personalities.
He's the hero we deserve.
But yeah, I mean, he's a very watchable guy.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching him go see Abby.
He said all the right words, man. They weren't poetic.
No, they weren't.
but they were the right ones.
She's like, come on, let me show you my bus.
Yeah, it felt sincere, and it was delivered in a way that a cowboy probably would have faltered over his lines and nervous about being put on the spot.
In your head, "You're my Super Bowl" would sound fine. It would sound great.
Right, in your truck in the dead of night driving to Texas.
Exactly.
Sounds so poetic.
But coming out of your lips, it's a different matter.
She was like, huh? I know.
Yeah. Didn't quite land.
You're like, just keep smiling. Okay.
Yeah.
No.
It's interesting that he didn't spell out to the gang that he was going to go find Abby. When he said he was just going to wander, it reminded me of Jules and Vinny Vega at the end of Pulp Fiction when he says, "I'm just going to wander the earth like Kane from Kung Fu." I was wondering if Ryan was going to do the same thing. Just traveled from one town to another, right some wrongs, and then just move on to the next town.
Mm-hmm.
Nah, he's going to go find Abby.
Yeah.
I think he didn't say anything because I don't think he wanted to catch any shit from the bunkhouse boys.
Yeah.
Smart.
Like he was already getting ragged on for his card playing. And
So Teeter, that would be the reason we had to kill Colby to propel Teeter
To
Texas, where
she's going to be on the next spinoff, right?
Some future show is going to take place. Yeah.
Do we have to?
It makes me wonder about that show. Like, they've been talking about McConaughey. They've been talking about with the kind of the uptick of Travis in this latter half of the season. Does that imply he's a bigger character in this show? If that's true, where does McConaughey's possible character comes in? Because you don't have him as like a guest star.
Right.
I think he comes in and he's your new John Dutton, whatever that is.
Right.
In Texas.
He's your main character.
Right.
Yeah.
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 It's all supposition though. They haven't really confirmed anything like that.
A few seasons ago when sort of the 4-6s came into this storyline, I was all for it. I want to see the 4-6s. I think that would be an interesting show. And then when Jimmy started sort of ending up down there, I was very on board with this. And I still do want to see it. I just don't know if I want to see it with Teeter there. I'm sorry. I just don't.
Maybe she'll smooth out that.
If she could fix her accent just a little bit, I probably could get on board.
Main killer.
Yeah. Well, they opened up the door here with her with
she had to get
$20 for an audiobook to learn English because Travis isn't going to speak hillbilly. So I feel like that's a way to sanitize that.
Okay,
going
maybe
forward.
so. Next time we see her, she's understandable. Okay.
And she's going to enunciate.
She needs like a King's Speech guy. Remember that guy?
Yeah.
That or Audrey Hepburn. The rains fall mainly on the plains.
Yes, like a Pygmalion situation.
That's it. I couldn't think of the movie. I was like, I'm seeing it in my head. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
So that kind of wraps up the Cowboys, right?
Yeah.
So for the most part. So I think we're moving along in terms of least emotional to most emotional or dramatic. So Rainwater and Casey might be next for us.
As part of those random episode viewings or things to see, I would encourage you to also, keep a close eye on Rainwater and what he's doing and the things going on around him. The presence of the reservation and I don't know if the right word is tribe exactly, but the Broken Rock Nation, I think was part of the helicopter related cost cuts at some point. Like wasn't there a casino and all these other locations and things?
Yes, that was like his office. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Broken Rock reservation has been cut down to Moe's car.
Essentially, yeah.
I'm sure there's reasons for that, but it was the minimum they could get away with. It does just sort of makes it weird to watch. like you mentioned, Angela Blue Thunder.
She's just gone.
She's just gone.
Yeah.
Well, essentially, he's neutralized her mostly with the Dutton land deal. I mean, she's just gone.
Oh, I'm sure he's immensely popular for this
absolutely.
move. Like Idi Amin level permanent president and ruler for the rest of his lifetime kind of elevation here.
I think, over the course of this whole series, Rainwater was such a strong character in the beginning and such a force against John. And then he kind of I was going to say petered out. And we didn't see much from him. And then he kind of became this sort of weak character that Angela Blue Thunder was overtaking. And so I liked seeing him sort of get a little bit stronger. I feel like he's sort of back on the rise again in terms of the strong person that he is, right, as a character. So I enjoyed watching him sort of gain a little bit back in terms of his power and his confidence and his strength,
Which makes...
Because he was so fun to watch in the beginning.
Oh, I like him.
Yeah.
And Gil Birmingham is a great actor.
Yeah.
When you see him in interviews or other things, he's actually capable of being kind of goofy. And so when you see him always being this solemn, they're out to get me kind of guy.
I actually had the pleasure of interviewing Gil a couple of seasons ago, and he was so amazing. He was so fun to talk to.
I had forgotten about that. Tell me more.
Yeah, he was just very down to earth and very candid, and he loved the fandom and the questions, and he loved the fact that we were podcasting about this. He goes so you just do this because you love the show? I was like, yeah, that's what we do. We talk about it. And he's like, this is fascinating. He just loved the fandom. He was just and just taking it all in. And I think he was just enjoying the moment of Yellowstone having its peak, because it was prior to all of this shenanigans that are happening. But also, in listening to the two of you talk about him, his character rather, it's kind of like watching a race. The Olympics were on over the summer. We're watching the long marathon here where, people kind of come to the forefront and then kind of ebb back. And now he's back in the forefront. Like he crossed the finish line the strongest here.
Right.
To take that running analogy kind of deep there. So I have a question. Going back to what we
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Yes. So the stunt that was pulled in the beginning with the reservoir, without the land deal happening imminently behind on its heels, would that alone have hurt Rainwater? If he didn't have this large, arguably one of the largest accomplishments in the modern history of the tribe of reclaiming these 800,000 acres or so of their historical land, would he have survived?
You mean
reservoir? Against Angela, his I can't remember the name of his young opponent who was trying to unseat him a couple of but he acknowledges Rainwater's accomplishment later on in this episode. I was just wondering if you think that Rainwater would have been okay after the reservoir thing if the Yellowstone hadn't happened.
I'm not Native American. and so living as they do on the reservations where resources are scarcer than they need them to be, and people have, they exist at a poverty level mostly, I could see it where they'd be highly supportive of sticking it to the man at first until whatever consequences came in. And
right,
then,
until the chips fall kind of
yeah
thing. And then they know the consequences.
That's my gut. But I mean, the times we live in, man, I can't predict what anyone's going to do.
Fair statement. That's fair.
I guess my initial response to that question would be probably not. It didn't seem like that was going to make much of a dent in the bigger issues. I didn't pick up on the fact that his previous opponent was the guy who congratulated him at the end.
Me neither, but he was kind of a
Sheila.
casual Friday when they were dismantling the Yellowstone.
Yeah, it was very quick, and it was literally like a sentence.
I was like, who's this guy?
Yeah, I didn't pick up on that. I thought it was just.
I remember that he was outside the casino when he was propped up by Angela Blue Thunder, and I was like, oh, didn't see her.
Nope.
That was a good moment then.
Yeah.
Good catch, good moment, good full circle kind of thing.
And Rainwater was very humble. He said it wasn't his doing. This was the creator allowing this to happen. So he's taking in this moment and feeling the history behind it. Like he got very emotional, like right after that, like he stepped away and he was tears in his eyes. So I feel like that was his moment. Like he's like, oh, I'm okay. I can breathe now.
So this conversation on the front porch with Rainwater and Casey and then the family is around and Mo's in the background. And like you said, you know, Rainwater walked up. He's like, so we don't even know what's going on here right now. It's a big secret from Casey. Yeah. And he just played it off pretty well, like not looking too surprised, but also not looking too happy, but being like on,
by that, you don't mean upset. You mean like containing how much happiness.
Yeah. He didn't look like, he didn't be like, oh, really? Wow. Okay, cool.
Super.
Like he didn't jump up and say, my season 1 prediction came true.
Yeah, he kept it nice and cool.
Stick it to you, Dutton.
It was so funny to me, though, how quickly they hashed out that contract. I'm like, man, that's pretty, fast lawyers there.
Did you like that it pretty much aligned with what we predicted, though?
I know,
yes. Right? Finally, some of our predictions besides my runtime of this episode came true.
Yeah. But I liked that we had Mo there, too, to sort of bring honor to the situation, too. You know, he stepped off and, like, had a moment that it seemed like he was sort of, giving thanks for the situation. Like, I liked that part of it as well. I liked that they both were so respectful about it in terms of just being honoring each other. And then that whole conversation about we're brothers now. I think the one thing that just missed for me, they are cutting their hand and they're making a blood covenant, but they didn't shake their hand. Maybe
that's not part of the tradition.
I don't know. I feel like it was in the preview though, like in a next time on Yellowstone.
Maybe the exchange of the blades,
I guess,
is that culture's version of
I just expected to see a little bit more of a, I don't know, like you're standing on the mountaintop and they're, the sun sets in the back and they shake each other's hand. Yeah, it just seemed a little verbal and less like of a physical like agreement, like they didn't shake each other's hands, which is pretty much a basic like agreement, right? You shake someone's hand. So that's the only little smidge that I'm going to like nitpick that it sort of missed for me.
But otherwise, emotional, solemn and respectful.
Yeah, I appreciated that.
And, here we go. We get the call back to 1883, where the land at that time was worth $1.25 an acre. And that's what Casey offered him for the 880,000 acres. There's my math on display.
Good job.
I think the sale of the land and the sequence of everything and all of that could be the subject of a future YouTube video where somebody with the right background explains how this would never work.
That does not make sense.
But I think for Hollywood purposes and something that people can understand that don't have a background in it, it works fine.
Yes, this is a fictitious television show, and we're going to take some things on faith and allow some poetic license, I think.
Right.
So I think Rainwater has had a really good understanding over the last 5 seasons of where John's thought process is with their land, right? I'm going to say their, being the possessive of both. And now understanding Casey and Casey's walking the path between the white world and the native world last season with his vision and wanting to walk away, but respectfully. I think the fact that we got to see that progression made this really satisfying for me.
And I think where I was maybe chalking up the pipeline caper as just a necessary evil to closing up this thing that had been started basically in the first half of the 5th season when the wheels were still on the bus, basically. It's now occurring to me that making that decision strengthens Rainwater's position as a steward of the land because he's willing to fight. He's willing to break the rules. He's willing to do what needs to be done. And that is central to what Elsa is saying about stewardship of the land, and also central to Casey's interpretation of his vision. that it's not necessarily the Dutton's job to do it forever.
Mm-hmm.
Someone else can save it too.
Yeah.
And Rainwater really taking a page out of John's playbook with, destruction, like wanton destruction of property that's not theirs. I think that's a really interesting corollary, that he came to know the Duttons so well that he was just like, well, sometimes you gotta knock the pipes into the water. Or,
basically, yeah.
Yeah, destroy millions of dollars worth of equipment. So I full circle is being, a very large theme here. I think that Rainwater has also shown us how he's grown as a character as well, for better and for worse. And I also appreciated the fact that Rainwater acknowledged that the land was sacred to the Duttons as well.
I agree. I think that was important too, that, he acknowledged it and agreed to keep, his ancestors there and honor them as well. It made me super sad when the kids were pushing down the headstones, and I immediately was like, no, you're not supposed to do, like, don't do that.
Right.
And then
on the first day,
I know.
Jesus.
I was like, come on. And then here comes
why
Mo.
is not even down yet.
Yeah.
On the barn.
Like you said, we sort of all agreed to keep both families' legacies, whole on this land. So I'm happy that Mo was there to protect that too.
Mo was wearing his badge. I had forgotten that he was tribal police. That had only come up once or twice elsewhere in the story. I just always thought he was like basically Rainwater's man.
Yeah.
Just his whatever I need done guy.
He's like a Rip. Whatever you need done.
I was going to say that, but he's not like Rip at all.
But within the confines of the law for the most part.
Well, sometimes slightly without.
I don't know. Mo had a
that's why I said slightly, within the confines of the law.
Yeah, right. Mo had a hostage at one point. So
yeah. Mo walks the line as he often has to make hard choices. But Mo was also there for the wolf sighting as Casey and Monica settled on their home, right? So East Camp is now officially theirs and protected, and the wolf reappeared, and that was very central to Casey's vision. So what do you think about the final vision and what this means for Casey's family and his future?
We had guessed that the previous appearance of the wolf at East Camp meant that Casey was on the right track. He was settling there, was the right choice for him. But the wolf ran off. Like he still had some, mystic wolf stuff to do. And here he is digging, I guess, a den or whatever wolves use to protect themselves at night, suggesting that now business is done and we're ready to everybody settle down here. That's what I got from the wolf sighting, and Mo saying, you're not going to get any trouble from this wolf. Like the wolf is full-time protecting them now.
Mm-hmm. And making a home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Making a home, yes.
Exactly.
Oh,
so
I really like that, yes. The thing that struck me about that moment, too, after Casey signed and he needed to step out and the emotion that he felt, at first I was like, oh, God, did he have like buyer's remorse or something like that? But he busted out and he was just like, he let out this huge sigh and said that he's finally free.
Mm-hmm.
And I was struck by how much of this episode, for both Beth and for Casey, the letting go of that ranch in particular, not necessarily the ranch that he's starting to build for himself, his own brand, but the Dutton ranch, felt like they were both being released from a prison sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the prison sentence was imposed by their own dad, right? He just kept emotionally, I don't want to say manipulating, but it was kind of like emotional manipulation, like you're not to sell, an inch of it and all the rest of it. Both of them felt so beholden to this promise that the letting go of it finally just felt like, oh my God, like I've been let out of prison. All right. So the next section, I guess, that we're going to move on to is probably the least fun to talk about in any kind of a situation, is John's funeral. Was this the right send-off for John?
Yes.
I agree.
I had wondered and semi-predicted that the funeral would not be this straightforward preacher saying words kind of thing, that there'd be some other stylistic bent to it. And on rewatch, I realized, hey, I was kind of right, because they played a violin, they watched and you couldn't hear the preacher.
Right.
And Beth was focusing on was it? Do you think that was an eagle?
Yeah, I thought it was an eagle.
Some sort of bird of prey.
Symbolic bird.
Yeah, and then it was done. There
Yeah.
really wasn't like a thank all ye who have gathered. It was none of that. And actually, when it was done and the time for courtesy was over, Rip dismissed the preacher pretty quickly.
Yeah. It's like, I think we're good on the prayers. Thanks.
Yeah, we're all prayed out.
Yeah.
So the song that was playing while Beth was having her little nature reverie was the same song that was played during Lee's funeral back in season 1, either episode 1 or episode 2. It's called A Soakin' Funeral.
Really?
Yeah.
I think it must have been 2 because they killed him in 1.
Yeah.
They killed him in 1. Yeah, so it had to be, I guess, yes, because then also John is sitting in the graveyard and he is picking out the spot for Lee, and he's doing the same thing that Beth is doing. He's looking up into the trees and he's seeing the wind blow through the branches. And another 1883 callback, Elsa, when she's dying, is talking about birds. And a bird lands on the branch, and that's what Beth is focusing on.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and do you remember when John was shot every fucking where? And he's on the asphalt, and the only thing he can see is a bird, and he's kind of reaching for it.
Yeah. Interesting.
And then Elsa in 1883 talks about like her earliest memory being of birds. So maybe birds have some sort of significance here.
I don't know.
Well, there's birds. I mean, I'm not a big poetry guy. I don't understand it because this symbolism
literal.
just never locks in.
Yeah.
But I do think birds do, even at my preschool level of symbolic understanding, represent freedom.
Yeah.
Right. And this is something that Beth and Casey are reaping by the end of this episode. And Beth's the one that notices the bird. Her bird, like I said, the bird of prey.
Yeah.
So although it's free, it's a killer.
It's a killing bird.
Right.
Much like Beth.
That's funny.
So one more thing that I noticed too is that when Rip and Lloyd are digging the grave, so before the funeral, there's an eagle-like bird flying overhead. And the name of the Broken Rock tribal leader in 1883 is called Spotted Eagle. And he's the one who makes a prediction that in 7 generations, my people will rise up and take this back from your people.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, they got it back. 1 out of 2 ain't bad, I guess, on that.
That's funny. I thought the funeral was as needed, right? It was what we needed to see. I appreciate that we didn't have to go too far into all of the feelings and hearing everybody's words. I liked that we did get a little, commentary from Linnell and I don't know, like this sort of ominous, I will avenge you from Beth. That was a little scary. I still wanted just a couple words from Rip. I really did. I get it. Like, this is his character. He's the strong,
He needed a private moment.
I know, but you couldn't have said something that we could have heard.
He did after he was done filling the hole.
And he dismissed the preacher and he thanked him. He said, I'm going to love your daughter
I know.
and take care of her. But it wasn't for anyone else's ears, I don't
You
think.
can't talk about loving anybody.
I know. Come on,
Feelings
though.
are
Like,
icky to people like Rip. No, feelings
are
gross.
icky to me, too.
Feelings.
I guess I expected a little tiny tear. You know what I mean? Like, just a smidge. Yeah, he said thank you and, whatever. But I just thought there'd be, like, 1 tear.
Back before I started watching the show, and I was just editing your podcast, and I would just listen, and you two would get to Rip, and you would mention a kinder. I think you did. I think both of you messed up kindler. Also,
we did.
A kinder, gentler Rip.
Totally see us doing that.
And I was, and I would think to myself, what in the hell are they talking?
Like, what? That's not who he is, Stephanie. Come on, get over it.
Kinder, gentler Rip. And then
Paul's remembering the guy who blew up the ME's office way back in
I
season
know.
1 or season 2 with the instruments in the microwave.
But we've come such a long way. We've grown.
He has. He has.
This show has become, it has emotion to it now. I feel like the emotions that we used to experience were, just fear or excitement or drama, and like now there's actual like love between people, and now there's respect, and all of these things have grown.
Legacy, right? We're talking legacy. Like, you can't have legacy if you don't have some sort of emotional. I just thought
there'd be like a little tiny teardrop. I'm just saying. I get it. He's ripped.
He's come to the brink several times since we found out that John has, passed on. But I don't think he's the type of person who would allow himself to go that far. I think he's going to find the steely resolve and be like, nope, that's not happening.
You guys are all just like, come on, seriously, Stephanie. He's not going to
get over it. I agree with you, but I just don't think that for this type of man, this type of character, I don't think he's going to allow that to happen.
Like I said, I kind of maybe expected one little thing, but he did. I think his
dewy-eyed, and then he put his sunglasses on.
Yeah, digging the grave and filling it in and being the one that's sort of doing that. I think that was his way of like saying goodbye and showing respect and
I even think he was more the voice of reason when, saying to Beth, like, you're not going to walk down. I'm just going to drive down. She's talking about her shoes and things like that. He's the one standing on ceremony for her family.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And she couldn't give a shit. She's just like, these shoes, whatever. Her Louboutins. I think that's the way in which he shows emotion. Like he's the type of guy who'd stand on ceremony and make sure that it's all done right. And I think that's the emotional range that we're getting out of him, that he's, no matter what, he's going to be true to the brand.
And the duty of it, right? Like the doing what's necessary and needed for that situation, regardless of feelings, right?
I mean, think about the progression. He was a kid that killed his dad.
Mm-hmm.
And he could have just wound up in prison or killed.
Dead himself, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's why. I think because John is the one who saved him, essentially, right?
Oh, yes.
And so I think that's why I keep holding on to this like little thought that like you could see emotion from Rip on this account.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? That's where I keep coming around.
A lot of emotion from Rip in the very seasons where John's biological children have been less than stellar, I feel like, in Rip's eyes. And he's just looking at them like, the whole nonsense with Casey, I think in season 2, when, they have to beat the snot out of each other. Yeah. And when before him and Beth got together, there was moments where he was just like, oh, I don't have the energy for you today.
Well, he was treated as the employee for most of this series. Do you know?
But I think he felt that his own children, John's own children, did not appreciate the man.
Oh, he resented Casey a lot.
Yeah.
Because he felt that Casey had been handed something that Rip
deserved and earned.
Dreamed of.
And he's the one that was there.
And he pissed it away and he ran off and then steps back into the ranch.
Just comes home and he's like, oh, you're the boss now.
Yeah.
Like the prodigal son.
Son, exactly. And so, he's a little salty when they first
understandably
start interacting with each other. But, he's his dad's man. He's going to live up to that, what he sees as that obligation, but he's not going to not have something, feel some certain way about Casey. I mentioned earlier, it's been a progression for those two guys. One last comment, and this is just, maybe you guys can agree since you're women. Or at least maybe no. Let me rephrase that. I'm not assuming you're going to agree with anything because you're women. I'm hoping to get another perspective from women.
Okay.
I noticed just internally, Linnell's tight skirt comment just didn't sit awesome with me, but I didn't say anything. But Caroline was like, "Man, that sucks. That comment sucks," and we're watching Landman, Taylor Sheridan's other big show that's on right now.
Yeah, I've been watching that too.
And he kind of writes the women like shit on that.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of one note, screechy, trashy kind of people. I'm sure maybe someone's going to say, no, they're not, but but have you watched the show? But so when I see Linnell talk about tight skirts at a funeral, I understand that's their relationship, and there's probably some interesting back and forth there that would have taken place had he been alive, and all that. I get it. I totally get it. And this is the last thing you want to say to him, though, is about that. I don't know. Something just felt internally a little icky. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel?
It didn't sit wrong with me. Like,
Okay.
I kind of thought it was like cheeky, like, oh, yeah. I thought it was a little term of endearment, like, oh, I wore what you like, baby, just for you. Like, I don't know.
When she walked off, I did check out to see if she was wearing a very tight, and it was a pencil skirt.
Tight skirt.
It was going to be very hard for her on that terrain.
That's so funny. I appreciated more the comment of like, go easy on the angels, whatever. Like, I appreciated that comment a little bit more, but I think, it's just a little flirty, like a little,
maybe
I got you, baby.
Joke.
I wore my skirt for you.
Like an inside joke maybe between them. It didn't.
See, I'm
it
too
didn't
puritanical.
not land well, but it was, I think it was just a little moment between her and John.
Yeah,
and,
it didn't sit wrong.
Okay, all right.
Maybe that should have been her internal intention, like
right.
All right.
Sure.
I did think whether it was loud enough for the other people to hear, though. Then but I thought so.
Right, this is just between them two.
But I was thinking it's awful quiet out in the middle of the woods. I'm sure they heard.
Yeah.
There was no violin music playing out
at that moment, right?
So
maybe it's just my little ears, like Ryan.
Your gentle
Ryan.
little ears.
I did notice though that Jamie was poignantly absent from the funeral.
Well,
nobody
as
called
expected.
him, right?
Yeah.
Well, Casey, I feel, was the last olive branch. And I think the conversation with Dillard, the last episode out, was whatever familial ties that existed between them were just gone. Because there was no other way for Jamie to know, because this was so small, so intimate, and just basically like, oh, they called, he's ready, let's do this.
Right.
If you recall, last podcast episode, we were wondering how Jamie was going to be involved in this. And I brought up that clip from the teaser with Jamie and the shotgun. And that never occurred.
No.
Someone might need to do a complete rewatch to find when they stole that clip from, because it wasn't this season.
No.
So that was put in there, I think, just red herring city, man. Just to make us think.
Like, he shows up with the shotgun.
Go down.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, because I was looking out for the shotgun, did not see it at all.
No.
So I guess that does bring us to Jamie.
That does.
Jamie. He is a spineless piece of trash, because he is just prepping for his press conference, and it is word for word Christina's pitch.
Yes.
He had nothing original to add to any of it.
I mean, he dressed it up.
He embellished a little bit, but like the substance was all her stuff.
Right. The bullet points were the same.
Yeah.
But
he finessed some of it.
As
but
expected. I didn't expect anything else.
Right. It just proves, the point that he's always has to be rescued by somebody.
I sort of felt proud of a prediction I had suggested that he was going to try to use his influence to stave off, all the consequences, especially with Beth. It didn't work. There was nothing about it that worked. Beth didn't even know about his speech, I assume. So
didn't seem like it, yeah.
But I, in terms of that idea of there should have been 7 or 8 seasons and we only got 5, it feels like that was his on-ramp into extending the life of his character,
right.
But it just got cut.
Fell flat.
Right.
You're dead.
He was having his Nick Cage moment from Con Air, when Nick Cage steps off the airplane and he's in the sunlight and his hair is blowing in the breeze when he's driving in the car, and he's so proud of himself as he listens to the radio say that
he's like,
he's about to rise as a leader in the vacuum of John.
I really am.
I rule.
Did you notice in his speech that he used the word execute an awful lot?
It was weird.
And it just made me so uncomfortable after the 3rd time. I was like, wow, that's a very strong word for somebody with the shenanigans you just had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Happen behind scenes.
I probably would not have put that word in my speech at all.
We had also talked about the inevitability of Jamie's demise.
Yeah.
And whether or not it needed to be Beth, Casey, Rip, something like these were the players. There wasn't going to be anyone besides them. Did you notice how strongly Beth reacted to Rip wanting to bring Casey in on the deal?
Oh, yeah. She was not having it.
She was adamant that Casey not know anything.
Oh, yeah.
Shrill is what I would say her voice was. Keep him out of this.
I know you're upset, and that's why you're yelling. or whatever she said.
I'm gonna forgive you.
So-
I'll let
I'm
you
gonna
get away with it.
I'll let you
forget
get away
you
with it
yelling
this
at
one
Oh
me.
time.
damn! I was like, shit.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But this is when Beth gets good, right? When she gets calm.
This is Beth.
You know, she said, nope, I made a promise. I'm going to keep it. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. You better step on the gas because you're part of the plan. And that's
gosh.
that's all we got.
Caroline felt like it was a shit plan, and I thought we had to watch it again for the podcast, and I thought, well, her plan was to get beat up. Actually,
Yeah.
she needed
Yeah.
to get beat up.
She
needed
had
to
to
get, like,
be the victim.
Yes, absolutely. And make it look really convincing that he was trying to kill her. Well,
Which-
well done, Jamie.
Yeah,
Well done,
did.
Beth. I mean, you know, she
God.
almost died the same way that the reporter that Jamie
Ooh.
killed in season.
Y'all, that was really hard to watch. I just don't like watching people get stabbed and
No.
like it was awful. I was like, ooh, oh my god. Like the whole time. It wasn't even watchable to me. It was so brutal.
Yes, it was brutal.
Oh, it was rough. I mean, the tie irons to the face. I'm like, come on, man.
Man, I think in reality, if you took one
Ooh.
tire iron to the face, that'd be
You-
it.
I
Yeah, that'd be
agree.
it. I'd be
Like your
done.
teeth would be
Dunsville.
falling out.
Tag the toe,
I
close the
think
drawer.
you'd be like getting back up. I think I expected a little bit more verbal abuse back and forth. They got the point across, right? And she, saw the look in his face when, we gave the ranch away basically, and his empire, fell before his eyes or whatever. So I think we got that check mark. But I don't know. I think just expectation. I thought there'd be a little bit more like yelling and calling names and like.
Let's sneak in a comment real quick, even though this isn't necessarily related, but it is a Jamie comment. You guys had mentioned last week that you thought Clara had been the mole for the news about the backroom deal and whether or not that was real or not. And the way they did play that little bit about the news making that allegation, again, prior to this episode. And to me, that underlined, it definitely was Clara then.
Yeah.
I mentioned in the preparation for this podcast, maybe we just don't go out on a limb to say, I don't know. But how about I'm going to go out on a limb and say, Clara did that. That was her contribution to this season to kind of turn up the heat.
Yeah, I feel like
on Jamie.
yes.
Yeah.
I feel like her fingerprints are all over that. The leaking to the press of the relationship between Jamie and Sarah. Yeah, I definitely feel that she understood the assignment and off she went to do it.
And that plays into Beth taking him down telling him that his empire is gone. Well, part of that was his backroom deal to get some plot of land set aside just for Jamie after the Yellowstone is sliced and diced by the state or market equities or whatever.
Yeah.
The fact that Beth chose a knife to kill Jamie with. She went to the gun cabinet.
I really wish she would have just shot him. That was
The only thing that she took was a knife and some bear spray.
bear spray.
Right? So, but the knife, I also feel, because it's in that cabinet, is probably the one that Elsa had, was given by her Comanche husband in 1883. The fact that it's in that cabinet feels like it heirloom worthy.
Would it be sharp enough?
Or
to
probably is, or probably dead ass sharp. But just the fact that Jamie is the one who consented to her having the hysterectomy, surgeon cut out her womb.
That's deep, Sheila.
I know. Well, this is what they pay me for.
I know.
Knives are a very personal way to go.
Yes, there's no mistaking what you're doing.
I watch a lot and read a lot about the mob. It just really fascinates me, the mob, the Italian-American mob. And they don't use knives.
No.
Because it takes too long.
Pretty messy.
So much can go wrong. They don't die that quick.
They may not die at all, depending on where you hit them.
Exactly.
A lot of bones in
There's
the
a
way.
lot of effort.
Right. And so if you do choose to use a knife, then there's some symbolic, personal
Yeah, that's personal
reason.
attack.
Yes. You are up close and you want this person, like she said, last thing your rotten fucking eyes are going to see is me. I've been thinking about that phrasing. I know we don't use a lot of profanity on this website or this podcast, but rotten fucking eyes, the order of those words is not the way I would say it.
You wouldn't?
No, I'd say fucking rotten eyes or something like that. And so Beth just choosing that phrasing, I don't know, just tickles me. I don't know of a better way to put it.
Withstanding, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the knife, very personal. And one go, she goes right for the heart.
Ooh.
and goes deep. And we are done with Jamie. There's like no last words, no
Nothing.
gasps, no nothing. Done.
Yuck. That's bad.
Well, as a character death, I mean, that finality.
Yeah.
I mean, even I'm watching a lot of shows where people get killed, and there's usually just that, even something that like that the fear that their life is over, and then laying them gently on the ground or whatever. But none of that. No, it was Rip's like, well, this one's gonna take some work.
He's like, damn it, Beth.
Right. I was already thinking like Rip's already looking for an area rug.
Yeah.
Because it's broad daylight.
It was as epic though as we needed from Yellowstone, right? I mean, it was just brutal.
Yeah, so I have a question, though, about the story that Beth gives to Dillard, right? And I'm so happy that he's on scene and he's seeing this through, because he's just been a really interesting
He's a good
character.
ad. Yeah.
Yes, he's been, he's just like, there's depth to him. And even though it's only been a couple of minutes really with him, I'm just like, oh, I like you. I'd like to see more of him, kind of thing. But is there enough substance to Beth's story here to neatly pin this on Jamie so that nobody goes looking for anything else? Like, I'm thinking like, I don't know, a big ass Yellowstone truck sitting outside Jamie Dutton's house the same day that he mysteriously disappeared.
In TV reality, when cops, I think in reality, when cops are pretty good with a narrative and they think that a conviction or closed case is the result of the narrative path that they're on, they're good with it.
Yeah,
they don't really tease it out after that. I mean, cops kind of sometimes get a bad reputation for having that strict mindset too early in the game, and they pin it on the wrong person. That person spends the rest of their life trying to sort it out. For some reason, those Duke lacrosse players come out right now. Remember that? Remember 20 years ago, these Duke lacrosse players were accused of rape at a party. And it was a big deal because they're white and the victim was black, and there was like sort of this class issue, and it was believe victims, and they definitely did it. And 20 years later, she's in jail for having killed somebody, and she says, no, I made it up. That happened like earlier this week.
Oh my God. This week?
This week.
Damn.
Those guys have been living with that hanging over their heads this whole time. They didn't go to jail. It didn't really stand up in court, but there's a narrative out there that people want to follow.
If you will, like after their name.
Yes, exactly. Completely exonerated though.
Yeah. I think this completely lines up for Dillard. I think he's heard what he needs to hear.
Yes.
He saw what he needed to see. I mean, Beth's the one laying there with a punctured lung.
Yeah.
Not Jamie.
Yeah, so he got the connection that he wanted between the file in his left hand and the file in his right hand, right? So
I think she gave him exactly what he needed to hear, and that he's no longer interested in other theories. I mean, unless some neighbor just decides to call the news about a big truck. I don't know. I don't think it matters at this point, that maybe someone saw a Yellowstone truck, or guessing they waited till after dark to drag a body out the front door. But, I think...
Well, they couldn't because they needed to call the EMTs
because
Beth had a punctured lung. She really did have a punctured lung.
Yeah.
She's all wheezing. I was like, oh.
Yeah. At first I thought that might have been put on, but I think that was legit.
I've had punctured lung.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
God.
It is awful. The worst pain I've ever experienced. It was the worst stabbing pain when trying to take a breath. It was excruciating. So I didn't want to breathe because it hurt way too.
Well, that's different.
Yeah. So I was taking the most shallow breaths possible just to avoid the pain. But so if she's got, punctured lung, she's in pain. She's like, I'm thinking, there's teeth missing. I'm like, this girl, she looks rough.
Fresh scars.
How many more scars could she take on her face? My gosh.
Yeah, the one that was there opened up. Now it has a nice X on it.
Beth.
I know. Man, she is.
I mean, she really took one for the team here.
Right? That's a lot to take.
That's a commitment.
Yeah. Just to get back at your brother.
It does make you wonder, the nature-nurture aspect of Jamie, was he condemned from a very early time to be this guy? The decision he made with Beth and the reservation doctor and all that, you can't really argue that he made a good call, obviously.
Yeah.
But you can understand why there, unfortunately, wasn't a better call to make in a lot of ways, aside from telling Dad, you know.
Right.
Or as 16 or 17-year-old kid, like what other option can you think of? You don't know.
So that there starts this trajectory of the two of their relationship at that point. So he ends up here, knife through the chest. It's the only way to go. But I can't hate him. I can't hate the guy.
I think that's why all along I've sort of been defending him a little bit, is I just felt like he didn't stand a chance with the hands he was dealt. I felt like he always tried to do what they wanted. And by they, meaning the Duttons, his family, his dad. But never could quite get there, never could quite live up to it. And then he'd have these moments of just awfulness, of being such a coward and a snake. And so we'd hate him again. And then I'd feel sorry for him again. And that's why I think I just love this character, because he's so just ew. And
you're right. I don't want to invite him over.
No, but
as a TV character,
I think I feel for the guy, you know. But then at this last half of the season, he just became this awful, terrible snake. And I wasn't sad. Do you know what I mean? I feel like there are times that I sort of feel for Jamie, and I'm like, oh, come on, guys, he's trying. No. This was okay. It didn't bother me that he died, right? It just almost felt justified, even though stabbing someone is not justified. I don't know.
Complicated.
Yeah.
It's not cut and dry.
No. I mean, but it was definitely the ending we expected, right? We knew that was coming.
In our guts. Yeah, I think we knew that. Yeah.
This had to have a knockdown, drag-out fight in order to satisfy the millions, right, who needed to see Beth just go at it one more time.
I agree. I think we needed that.
And you got to touch a rip.
That's closure.
It is. It's closure for that.
Could you imagine you're Wes Bentley reading the season scripts, and you're like, how many times am I getting thrown across the room this season? Okay, just twice. Okay.
How many gallons of milk do I have to keep in my fridge?
How many times am I going to get punched in the face?
For the bear spray.
He handled it well.
Yeah, he's a trooper, man.
I know, right?
He punched that last ticket right to the train station, so...
And then again, we had the, like you just said, Paul, Rip busting in and sort of finalizing the situation, rescuing Beth enough.
A very iffy part of the plan, if you're Beth, right?
Oh, no, she knew. She knew.
She didn't count
Why would she just tell him, listen, babe? Because, he'd be like,
me again, love you, thanks.
Rip wouldn't have gone along with it.
I know.
He had to be put in that position.
Yeah, he had to go rescue her. Otherwise, he would have stopped her before all that.
Caroline, I keep bringing her up. She didn't exactly feel great about Beth needing to be rescued. And I was like, well, she's needed to be rescued before. And so I found the clip of the mercenaries in the office and Rip busts in. And
wasn't she being choked then as well?
She was about to get shot. She was screaming in this guy's face
she was
to shoot her. And she'd already been beaten a lot.
Badly, right.
And that's when Rip happens.
He gets shot and keeps coming at them, right?
It is one of the best scenes ever.
That was a crazy episode.
So I confirmed. She does occasionally need help.
Yeah.
She stands on her own a lot, but she does still need help. Like, for instance, with this ranch she bought. How do you guys feel about Beth buying a ranch? She came in, what was she, Denver based originally when
I remember.
Utah something.
Utah, was that it?
Yeah, I think it was like that. Yeah.
So she'd made a go of it in finance, I guess, right?
Yeah,
and
wherever.
Somewhere where she made enough money that she can keep renting Bentleys and buying ranches, and it doesn't seem to need her to actually go to work.
Right?
Was that just a pathway to a nice tied bow for those two? Or is there any element where you're like, Beth doesn't really want to live on a ranch anymore?
No, I thought it was a good ending for them. I feel like she's there now. I feel like she's past that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I said earlier in our podcast, like she has to decide on Rip's fate, right? She's selling the ranch. That's his livelihood. And I really liked that she, I don't know if we want to say, took care of him in that way, of that she provided him with what he loves to do.
Well, and it's meaningful.
And then they have Carter. And I feel like this is just the new, like the other side of Beth. Like she finished that old part of Beth, right? She's done. She killed Jamie. I feel like we're not going to see that side of her anymore if we were going to see more of her, right? I mean, who's left to fight?
I think that's a really good point.
I just think this is like, that was the end, right? We said closure. That was the end of that Beth. And I think the ranch and Dylan and Rip and Carter, and that's the new future. And I think she's happy with that. I think she's likes the little bar. There's no tourists, and I don't know what she's going to do for work. Apparently she can work from home.
Or what this show's going to be about.
Be a gazillionaire and have a Bentley. But,
exactly.
But whatever.
Side note, Allie Larder on Landman also drives a Bentley.
On the show? Okay.
Maybe they just borrowed the one from Yellowstone.
I think so, yeah.
Jeez.
I was kind of thinking in my mind, like, what would their show be in Dillon, Montana? I looked it up. It's near Idaho as things go. I mean, it might be hundreds of miles, but it's way closer to the Idaho border than the rest of the show.
Yeah, it's much more remote.
I was kind of thinking, are they going to be like Private Eyes, solving crimes, like, Simon and Simon or something?
That's
like
so funny. Oh my gosh.
I think, again, it's the fact that it's not that ranch. It's not the Dutton ranch. It's not the Yellowstone.
The weight of it.
Yeah.
The weight of it, yes, because I think that getting that offloaded in the right way, that she can feel fulfilled in her promise to her dad, and also having the closure with Jamie, having done all that. I don't think this is a compromise. I think this is the right path for her. She needs peace.
Agree.
She's where she wants to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, Stef, both you and Paul really nailed it on the head. Like, she needs peace. Like, I think the arc with Jamie, that aged her and exhausted her and punctured her lung, among other things.
Broke her jaw.
Whatever else. Yeah.
Didn't help her alcoholism at all.
No.
Didn't help the alcoholism, but, maybe that'll come in time too. But I just think that this is a much better lifestyle for her, because the ranch was killing everybody, and it wasn't working for anybody.
It felt right.
Before we get to the final thoughts, I have a trivia question for you guys.
I see it, and I can't wait to hear the answer.
Who has the most kills on Yellowstone? Is it Rip? Is it Steve Hendon? Remember Agent Steve Hendon?
Yeah.
Or is it Casey?
So I remember Steve Hendon basically accidentally killing, I think, 3 people. I think 3.
You can say accidentally.
I mean, or
like
negligently.
Steve is anywhere near the top of that list. I would say Rip.
Rip, let's see.
It has to be Rip.
Lloyd, actually, remember the first cowboy that they took to the train station? I think Lloyd took that guy out.
Oh, yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Rip took out those 2 guys that were attacking Beth.
Oh, well, Casey killed the...
Casey's killed a couple people.
Yeah.
He killed Monica's brother, which is still sort of a family secret.
Yeah. He killed the Beck brothers, right? Or
he killed several of them.
Yeah.
Several of the people involved with it, the mercenaries.
I don't know. Okay, now I'm leaning towards Casey.
I'm leaning toward Casey.
Yeah.
So apparently Rip has 9, Casey has 5, and Steve has 3, apparently. I don't know if you believe the
Out of all of the seasons, Rip has only killed 9 people.
Only 9?
Come on, that's a lot of episodes. That's a lot of adversaries we have faced.
I would say on-screen kills. Let's say that.
Right. So Rip gets the Cadillac, Casey the steak knives, and
right. Rip gets the Bentley. Right.
I'm sorry, but this whole series only 9 people.
Confirmed that we directly know about. I'm sure there's like indirect.
Does this rattlesnake guy count? The
rattlesnake
to the neck?
Rourke. Yep. That was one.
That was an awesome one.
Yeah, that was a great one. That was poetic.
Interesting. But, so much has happened. There's a lot of details floating around in our Yellowstone heads. Some of them may be confused. Right? Ultimately, guys, this is so awesome. We love this show. It's really fun to watch. I think pretty soon I'm ready to binge from the beginning. Like we've watched every single episode many times. I haven't binge watched this show. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
And I love binge watching a good TV show. So maybe not quite yet because we just wrapped this up, but probably in a few months. Because I'm a binge watcher. I like to have my shows on while I'm cooking dinner, while I'm folding laundry. All my shows are on. So usually it's
and this
Friends.
one's good because we know so much about it.
Yeah.
So you don't have to pay.
So I think pretty soon I'm ready to just binge it and like have it on and have like that experience with the show. And I think I'm going to love it just as much. Like this is just such a good TV show.
Over Thanksgiving last month, it was on TV. They had a marathon on. They were showing everything up until
there was no way I could sit down and watch all that.
No.
I got stuff to do.
It's days. But
1923 is coming out soon.
Yeah.
So that'll scratch a little itch.
Yeah.
February, right.
If you aren't a 1923 watcher, remember I made that puritanical observation earlier about the tight skirt. And so here's your church lady warning about 1923 is that there is a character with some sexual proclivities that feel way off from the context of the rest of the show. It does a lot to show us that this guy is a sadistic guy. However, watching it, you're like, this feels like Game of Thrones level oddity. And there's also, on the violence side, there's a lot of time spent at an Indian school. And a girl that doesn't take shit. That she's an inspiring character, but she has to go through some stuff that if that's not your thing, you get the point and you can press the forward button a couple times and you can see what happens afterwards and be completely caught up. Just a warning, 1923 has some extremes to it that aren't seen in the other two shows so far. I mean, it's good.
Yeah.
It is good. And the promise of the season to come, actually, if you are thinking of binging, Stef, or listener, you might actually wait for that season to just wrap up.
Okay.
And then start. Because it ends with okay, now everything's going to get started. Kind of, it's like season one feels like the prequel to what
really
the show is really supposed to be about. Yeah.
Awesome.
Whereas 1883 is so worth seeing because it is probably the truest representation of that wagon train life and how hard it was. Seeing Faith Hill have to fight off a woman in a river crossing that goes badly and decide, if I don't fight this woman, she's going to kill me. And this is Faith Hill, country singer, superstar.
She doesn't look like Faith Hill at all.
No.
Yeah.
But that's the point.
Such a good show.
That's the point. If you go and watch, say, like another show that came out around the same time was Walker Independence on the CW. Same kind of era. But the girls are very pretty and made up, and the men are all very handsome and don't look that rough. And it's almost like chess and checkers.
Yeah, this is not the same. Yeah.
Yes.
They look like they've been on the trail.
1883, though, to get that bookend grounding in what the Duttons were and started as, and where sort of that sense of family and honor came from.
Yeah.
Understanding James Dutton is where you want to start.
I agree.
Yeah.
And how they ended up right where they stayed.
Yeah.
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 All right. Well, Sheila, we'll miss you.
Really great.
Come to Texas.
Podcasting with you guys. There's one thought that I had just as we were kind of wrapping things up here, that line that Jamie's listening to in the car when the newscasters are talking about his speech and how wonderful it was, and like, in the vacuum of leadership, like a leader must rise.
Yeah.
I think to sum all of this up, I think Casey was the leader that rose this season.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
that's the leader that they needed. And I'm really happy that that's the arc for him and the growth that character has had. I think that's the right move. It will shut down a lot of the Game of Thrones comparisons that are out there.
I mean, could you imagine being so decisive as to selling $1 billion ranch for $1 million and being the one person that makes that call?
And that not even a bicycle is going to be allowed on it.
And having the whole show up, I mean, yes, it built properly, but where he started was a guy that really didn't want to be in charge of anything.
Yeah. He didn't want any part of it, really.
He didn't want any part of the ranch, and he didn't want anybody like relying on him. He didn't have a real job, you know, just he had day work as a horse. I don't know what.
Trainer. I think.
Yeah, something
Trainer.
like that. So
But that's a very loose interpretation.
Yeah. So to go from that to making such a monumental call.
That's awesome.
And it being believable. Yeah, that's some great TV.
Yeah.
Definitely going to miss this show. I'm going to miss podcasting the show about you guys. Or miss podcasting about the show with you guys.
We'll miss you too.
We can still find some reason to talk, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
There might even be future Yellowstone shows that you're like really revved up about. So I don't think we're done.
Don't think so. I think you might hear from us again. Definitely you guys will be back with 1923, I'm sure, in February, Caroline and Mike.
That is a Caroline and Mike show, and they get a lot of good reviews on their coverage. Mike is a research monkey and just goes into depth about the time and place and stuff that lets you know how much was put into the show to make sure it's correct.
Right.
Well, I agree, guys. It's been super awesome talking to you. Thank you for letting me sit in on this last half of
Thank you for being here.
Last bit of the podcast, kind of smooth over this little period where Sheila's IRL had an accelerated need for her to be there in person. That's where we are in our
When
lives
life
right
gets
now.
in the way.
Yeah.
Being an adult. Fun. I guess for one last time.
This is Stef.
This is Paul.
And this is Sheila. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.
Pod Clubhouse.